Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Standpoint. We've been talking about the suspension of the CBN governor and his implications as well. We've been speaking with the CEO, CCPE, Mr. Muda Yusuf. But now we're going to just broaden that conversation to look at the economic direction of the president. And let me ask you, because we've seen the president make a lot of decisions around the economy recently, and this suspension is one of them. But let's look at his approach to the economy. How would you assess it so far?
Well, so far, so good. Because what we expected from him are things that relate to some very critical reforms of the economy. And the whole idea of reforms is to create a much better policy environment, a much better macroeconomic environment, a much better regulatory environment, a much better policy environment, and to also ensure the security of lives and property. And so far, all the steps that he has taken are in furtherance of ensuring that. Now, we know that two major subsidies have been a very big problem for this economy: the fuel subsidy and the foreign exchange subsidy. That was why he was very categorical from day one that the fuel subsidy has to go. It was his determination to emphasize it that made him to say that subsidy is gone. And that phrase took a different turn in terms of the impact on the whole process. The second point, which was categorical, is the unification of the exchange rate. These two things are very important because of, first, the impact they are having on our revenue, because we are spending anywhere between 6 to 7 trillion on this subsidy. More importantly, the impact is having on investment in our oil and gas sector. One of the biggest, richest endowments we have in terms of natural resources is oil and gas. But we have a policy regime that is making it difficult for investors to invest in that space. That is why for close to, how many years now? We have been in oil business for close to 60 years. There is no single tangible, sizable private investment in refineries, apart from the Dangote that came up just recently. And all of this was because of the policy environment. Because we had a policy structure that made it possible only for the government institutions to be playing there, which was why we have only government refineries. And you know the nature of government. Government is not cut out to be managing such an enterprise. It's not for lack of quality people, but the process and the structure will not allow you to achieve results. The bureaucracy, the processes, the political interference, and not reckoning with merit and all, will not allow the system to work. So that is why it is very important. So with this, we are going to unlock a whole lot of opportunities for investment in the oil and gas sector. In addition to that, we are going to save a lot in terms of foreign exchange.
Do you think that we've somehow restored investor confidence with the removal of fees subsidy? And then does the removal, or the suspension rather, not removal, the suspension of the CBN governor, what would that also mean for investor confidence?
Well, the subsidy removal has elevated the confidence and has also elevated the level of positive expectations around this administration and around opportunities and the prospects of growth in the oil and gas sector, significantly. Because what we are seeing is a process that is hardly reversible. That is what it is. So the impact on investment will be very, very significant. Now, for the CBN governor, because of his stance on some key policies that investors have been expecting to change, that many, even financial institutions, international financial, have been also clamoring for. But he doesn't buy, or he did not buy into those ideas. He doesn't believe so much in the market. And for an economy as vibrant as we have, for an economy with so much entrepreneurs, the bigger the space you create for the market to function, the better the outcomes you get in terms of growth, revenue, and employment generation. So some of his policies were obstructing the market, like what we have in the foreign exchange market. So that is going to lift a lot of confidence now. Because his removal was not only about him, or his suspension was not just only about him. It's also about the kind of policy that he has entrenched in the system, which many people believe has been working against the growth of investment, and which also has become highly transactional. So when you remove such obstacles, because it's an obstacle to investment, once you remove such obstacles, you increase the chances of economic growth to increase. You increase the chances of inflow of capital. Whether you are talking of FDI, you are talking about portfolio flows, you are talking about even repatriation from export proceeds, diaspora remittances, all of these things will improve. And we are likely to see an improvement on the supply side of the foreign exchange equation. Because exchange rate is a price. It depends on what is happening on the supply side and what is happening on the demand side. You have the demand side, which has been bloated by people who are looking for arbitrage. Arbitrage means when you take foreign exchange from the official window and you sell it at the parallel market window. That's a huge demand that has been generated by that arbitrage. So if you unify it, that component of demand will fizzle out. Then the obstruction that is being created on the supply side will also be removed, so that you have a situation where you have an improvement on the supply side. And we expect that gradually the exchange rates will continue to come down. And the intervention framework should not be that the central bank will go and be fixing rates in the I&E window. It doesn't work that way. The CBN can intervene depending on its capacity to put supply of foreign exchange in the market, so that you have a foreign exchange market that is more liquid. I mean, look at what is happening to the foreign airlines. Is it not an embarrassment globally to us that Nigeria has the highest amount of airline funds that have been stuck in the country?
But let me ask you about what interventionist measures you think that we should put in place, because some people are worried about whether this fuel subsidy removal will lead to inflation, will worsen inflation and economic instability. But what sort of interventionist measures should we put in place if we are to avoid that?
Well, some measures have been discussed already. The president has talked about need to review wages, which is very important, because the wages are...
All right, so let me put you on hold, Mr. Muda Yusuf. We have breaking news just in. We We're still on the coverage of the suspension of Godwin Emefiele. We can now confirm to you through an exclusive footage obtained by TVC News that the former governor is now in DSS custody. In a press statement by Public Relations Officer, Department of State Services, the Department of State Services hereby confirms that Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the suspended governor of the central bank, is now in custody for some investigative reasons. The public, particularly the media, is enjoined to apply utmost caution in the reportage and narratives concerning this. Details are sketchy, but what we can confirm is that the CBN governor is now in DSS custody, and we're confirming that through an exclusive footage obtained by TVC News. Right, that's the footage there, the exclusive footage obtained by TVC, where we can see that the DSS now has the former governor of the, or suspended governor of the CBN in custody. There was a press statement released by the public relations officer of the Department of State Service, where he's enjoining the media to apply utmost caution in the reportage and narratives concerning this. He's also confirming that the DSS now has Godwin Emefiele in custody. You'll remember that he was suspended yesterday by the president, and that's because of investigation around some of allegations, about him and policies he took while in office. We understand he was arrested in Lagos and is off to Abuja. All right, we will bring you details of that particular story as we have them. But I just want to ask you, you saw that footage. TVC has it exclusively. He's now in the custody of the DSS. He was arrested here in Lagos, and he's been taken to Abuja. How do you react to that? I'm not sure if it has happened before now that a CBN governor is being investigated in that capacity when you look at the allegations by the DSS.
Before now, there was an attempt to arrest him under the Buhari administration. But somehow, that attempt was blocked, because I understand at that time it took the military, to go and get him at the airport, to escort him out of the airport at that time. So I imagine that those issues are now coming up again. And for the DSS to take these steps, they must have had some evidence which requires some clarification. And of course, this is a process of investigation. If you are being investigated, of course, you have to be taken on board to their custody to explain a few things. So I think it is what it is. Nobody is above the law. If there's an infraction on the policy or processes or procedures of government or regulations of government, people should be held accountable. So it's a process of accountability. So it is for him to now, it's an opportunity for him to defend himself, depending on what evidence is being brought is being brought forward, at least by way of allegations to him. But this is not the first time they are attempting to arrest him. So,
But how far-reaching do you see this investigation going?
Well, it's going to be far-reaching depending on the scope of the investigation. We are not insiders. We don't have the figures. So we don't know what infractions have been committed over time. Of course, there are a lot of issues. For instance, for a number of years, we haven't seen any published audited accounts of the Central Bank of Nigeria, at least for some years now. All of these things are issues that border on corporate governance.
And how often is that account supposed to be audited?
It's supposed to be annual. For any corporate entity, your account is supposed to be annual, So, and there may be other information that people have around this that has necessitated this arrest. So it's for him to prove himself. But this will not in any way affect the stability of the financial system, affect the quality of economic policies. If anything, I'm not talking about this arrest now. At least we have a better room to fine-tune some policies, particularly around monetary policy, foreign exchange policy, some of these policies which I refer to earlier that have been impeding the growth of
and how well do you know the now acting, we'll call him the acting CBN governor, who Folashodun, who has now, he's the next person, he has handed over to him. How well do you know him, and how well do you think he's going to perform while he's acting anyway?
Well, I don't know him that much, but I imagine that the acting responsibility is not going to take long. Yeah, it's not going to take long. Of course, there are some critical frameworks for policy processes to be done. He may not be in a position to take any major policy decision or major policy changes because he's in an acting capacity. So he will also have to tread softly. But more importantly is to align whatever they are doing with the policy thrust of the present administration.
But because
that is very important.
Because you said he's not going to stay long, which means that, anyway, the CBN governors, like we were saying earlier, his tenure was going to be over in a matter of weeks, which means that the president will still have appointed, will still need to appoint a CBN governor.
Of course.
And so let's look at that office and that of the Ministry of Finance, because one of the major challenges we saw in the Buhari administration was that people kept complaining that, those of you in that sector kept complaining about how there was no synergy of the fiscal and monetary policy. How critical are those appointments for the president if he's to drive his economic policies?
No, those appointments are very, very important. They are very critical. Because we don't want, as we have seen in the last few years, some very important agencies of government to become a platform for patronage. The focus should be on the delivery of maximum value for Nigerians, promoting efficiency, promoting stability, and all of that. So the quality of appointees, I think, is very, very paramount. And the good thing is that President Tinubu has a track record, of getting quality people to man some very important technical positions. So we expect that to happen. We also expect a very good economic team, because nobody knows it all. And that's what we call the general equilibrium approach to economic management. In other words, when you are taking on a policy, you have to look at the implication of the policy for other sectors beyond your own narrow objective of the policy. Because in some policy environment, there's sometimes a whole lot of collateral damage that can happen. Even though you have your focus on one small objective, in trying to achieve that, you could do a lot more damage to other sectors of the economy. So that is why it is important to always have a team approach, to some of these policy measures. So that kind of thing should happen, so that there is some consultation among the key ministries about the quality of policies, the implications of policies, so that they're on the same page as far as economic management is concerned. So that you don't have people going in different directions, as we have had in the past few years.
Quite interesting times, especially with this new suspension and arrest of the CBN governor by the DSS unprecedented. Thank you so much for talking to us, Mr. Mbude Yusuf. I'm sure we're going to have you over and over again to look at the economic policies of the president as his administration begins to take shape.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. All right, TVC News is staying on the suspension and now the arrest of the CBN governor by the DSS. Let's just tell you again that we now have a footage obtained exclusively by TVC News of the arrest of the CBN governor. He's now in DSS custody. There was a press statement released by the Public Relations Officer of the State Services. That's where he also confirmed that Mr. Godwin Emefiele, that's the suspended governor of the Central Bank, is now in its custody for some investigative reasons. He enjoined the public, particularly the media, to apply utmost caution in the reportage and narratives concerning this. We understand that the CBN governor was arrested in Lagos and is now being taken to Abuja. I am Precious Amayo. Thanks for watching.